man, that's the word that I was looking for.
Yeah.
When you asked me, purpose.
Yeah.
You know, my purpose is not just to study things for the sake of studying them. It's to do something that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
And if you are lucky enough, at least in my world, you know, in my area of expertise, if we're lucky enough to get to apply knowledge and science to fixing a thing, I mean, that's like, that gives you the purpose that matters. You know? And so it makes me happy. I might not bubbly today because this is just like seeing it happen. I'm stoked out of my mind. You know.
This is the Connected by Water podcast, fueled by Papa's Pilar Rum, who remind us never to be a spectator. And protected by Starbright, where it's always Starbright season. Special thanks to our sponsors, Seaward Systems, Holokai, Parchview, and Lingchini for their great support of our show. This special edition travel episode was recorded on location with our legendary guest.
Pretty amazing sight. Fire away, man.
It's all good.
I'll wing it good.
Dr. Todd Osborne, thank you for sitting with me today.
Oh man, my pleasure.
I'm just so in awe about the work that you've been doing here. You know, we had Cory on, we had Blair on, and everything's been leading up to this conversation with you, right? This is what I really want to know, like the nerdy science stuff behind it, right? It's like I get into it. I hate to say it like that, but I think that's like a cool way to say it.
That's the funnest part of my job,
right?
Man. Yeah, absolutely. Doing this stuff is so much fun.
To my understanding, right, you're taking the clams with a new kind of water so they survive, right? Am I saying that in a good elementary way?
We are morphing our clam project to use more of an ecological principle.
Okay.
You know, I mean, like initially when we started all the work with clams, you know, I mean, we were bulk. It was just like, you know, just muscling through it, growing big adults, transporting them down here, putting them under nets, tending those nets. And that's where, you know, like Cory is a hero. She's out there like every day with Norm and Alex, really, you know, keeping tabs on those nets, because the gear we use to protect them is the one that is the factor that requires so much effort, right? But so this new principle is using a drone to disperse very small clams. I mean, like between 1 and 3 millimeters in size, what we call seed clams. Okay. Which is what aquaculture produces for farmers to plant on their leases, you know, under nets and things like that. But we're using them as a natural, you know, dispersal mechanism for the population. And the point is that, well, it costs us an awful lot less to do it that way. And we don't need any nets, and we don't need to be out there checking them every day.
Cost control is important.
Cost is important, and we can do 3 to 4 times more with the drone and with the seed clams than we do when we're doing our adults. Now, it takes more time in nature, and a lot of people said, well, hey man, you're just feeding fish. Yes, we are feeding fish, and that's part of the plan. That, you know, if we had 5% survival, this would work great. And we're seeing well above that. I mean, our latest work at 14 months after deployment was 13.2%. And so that's, to me, that's tremendous.
Fantastic.
But the principle is one in ecology. If you remember from science class, like maybe in high school, that they talked about, you know, the strategy for reproduction. You know, like humans, they call it K strategy. We have a child, we nurture that child for a long time, sometimes forever, right?
Feels like forever.
Yeah, sometimes forever. And, you know, and then you're like, come on, out of the house, fly on your own. But so we put a lot of energy into that. The other strategy out there in the natural world is called an R strategy. And that's like, take a sea turtle, for example. Crawls up on the beach, lays its eggs, buries them, see you later, and they're gone. That's it. That's all the energy that's put in, is the production of the actual organism. Clams do the same thing. They spit out all their gametes, those get together out in the water, they form larvae, and they do it by the millions. And the strategy there is like, well, you know, if we don't take care of our offspring, things are gonna eat it. And the ecosystem's built on that principle, you know, that outside of a dolphin out here or a manatee, there are no organisms that use the K strategy. They're all our strategists, right?
That's interesting, yeah.
And so the ecosystem as a pyramid of food is built on that principle too. So a clam, small clam, may produce 1 to 2 million eggs at a time. That's food for a lot of things, right? Other filter feeders, oysters, other clams, you know, they filter water and they eat this stuff. fish eat this stuff. Menhaden are out there chomping them up. So the ecosystem requires that. And so when we put out millions of these little tiny clams, we expect 90% of them to get eaten, and that's okay because
so it's going to plan, even
part
better than plan.
Yeah. Derek's famous quote. He always says, a rising tide lifts all ships or all boats. It's so true. And what we're trying to mimic here is that same principle. You put out a lot of seed clams, and with the drone, it's very predictable, the densities.
Right.
You get about 23 per square foot if we put 1 million on an acre, right? And what that means is my target really is to have 1 per square foot at the end of the day as an adult.
Really?
And and we're well above that, and that's great. A natural density of clams in other places but the lagoon is maybe 1 per square meter or square yard, which is really, dispersed, right?
Okay.
For reproductive purposes, we want them closer. But naturally in the lagoon, at the time of the big harvest events, they were, you just reach your hands in the water and pull 4 or 5 out at a time because they were so dense. And the lagoon was very clear. And, I think that correlation is so important that, we can't say it because we didn't test that back then ecologically as a test. But we know when we lost the clams, we lost water quality, and they were tracking very closely. And so, yeah, there's a premise there that's kind of undeniable.
Yeah. Explain to the audience real quick, and it may be obvious to some, but may not be obvious to others. Like, what's your goal here? What's the end result? What's your hope?
So, I didn't grow up on the Indian River Lagoon, but the rivers I grew up fishing as a kid are trashed, and they're never coming back. This one has hope. And so for me as a scientist, being able to actually apply what we do now, the science model is get some funding, study some question, write a paper, goes in a journal in the library somewhere, maybe somebody will read it, and we'll be adding to the body of science and knowledge. But to me, the true fulfillment, other than teaching, which is a thing I love to do, is seeing like the actual work we do get applied for some benefit, And so if you're an environmental scientist, doing something positive for the environment is the holy grail. That's what we live for,
100%.
And so to see
I
this
love that
happen,
they call it Action Day.
Oh man, this is
because it
perfect.
explains it perfectly.
Yeah. To be involved in something like this, to me, is like the best part of my job.
Yeah.
I couldn't have a better job. This is so cool to sit with you guys, seeing everybody doing their thing, whatever it is.
100%. It's the same thing too with what we do, like the Connected by Water podcast and even the art studio and all the different things we try to get involved with. It's all great to talk about it, but to actually be at ground zero and be involved in doing something for us is meaningful. It gives it a lot of intrinsic value as well. So we're very happy with the way everything's been going for this event so far. We're very happy with the way, everybody's just putting their hands in the dirt and the rocks and the shells and everything, getting it done. I
promise you, man, there's nothing more satisfying than like actually physically doing it. We sit around and talk all the time. After you go out in the boat, you're talking about your day fishing and whatever. And the gripes that we have about the water quality, about the fishing used to be so much better. Why don't we have that? That's one part of getting the job done, is like, showing the problem, making it known. The other part is actually doing the fix-it work.
Right.
And that's what this is, And so to me, it's so invigorating to be like hands-on doing it.
Boots in the water.
I'm super proud of the clam project, but that's just one little thing. That's one piece of the puzzle. The puzzle is huge, and all the pieces matter, So the mangroves, the oysters, the awareness, just the fact that you bring guests on all the time, and you guys hit these issues and you make it known to people, because a lot of folks can go through their day to day and not be aware. But awareness makes a huge difference.
That's the reason for the show is we want to bring it to the masses and just let people know that it's one thing to talk about, or one thing to even just think, oh, we got to fix things. It's like, well, people are actually taking action, and we want to exploit that. We want the world to know about it. So.
And I think that, you guys are doing a great job too. I'm gonna prop this painting behind me, because I saw this at ICAST going on, and the number of people that stopped and were just like mesmerized by the process of you and Derek painting together. These two different brains and artistic people and their interpretation of this image working together got a lot of attention. And the whole time you guys are propping up mangrove projects,
right?
do-gooder program, new swell, the clam project was tremendous, man. I mean, thank you, because that is getting the message out
And
to
it gives
whoever.
the work purpose too. It gives the work purpose, and that's meaningful for Derek and I, because conservation, preservation, restoration of our natural resources is really, really important to us, and it's a life calling. And for our artwork to be able to be a conduit for that message, it gives it purpose. It gives it meaning.
Man, that's the word that I was looking for.
Yeah.
When you asked me, purpose.
Yeah.
My purpose is not just to study things for the sake of studying them. It's to do something that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
And if you are lucky enough, at least in my world, in my area of expertise, if we're lucky enough to get to apply knowledge and science to fixing a thing, I mean, that's like, that gives you the purpose that matters. And so it makes me happy. I might know I'm bubbly today because this is just like seeing it happen. I'm stoked out of my mind, to see this going on.
Dr. Todd, thank you very much for sitting with me and going through all this. And we've got a huge day ahead of us.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Thank you for taking the time to talk.
Thank you, man.
Yep.